What is up, everybody? I think we are live here. First time doing this on my own. Usually Andrew handles this, but yeah, welcome to another edition of the Just Mets podcast. This is a bit of a new show for us. So we're calling this, I guess, the Midweek Show. Don't know if that's the name that will stick forever or if it's just what I decided to call it right now. But essentially, this is a new additional show we're going to be doing every single week. Obviously, Andrew and I will continue to do our weekly show together, which will be every Sunday night after the Mets finish their game. But we wanted to also react a bit to the series that we're going on in the middle of the week. And, you know, it won't be as intensive, I guess, as those episodes that we do together. The formatting will be a little bit more loose, but we wanted to put something up in the middle of the week just to keep tabs with some of the stuff going on, maybe deep dive a little bit more on the individual series as we can. So obviously that'll depend on, you know, just the Mets schedule. So likely will mostly be Wednesdays or Thursdays with that stuff coming out. Usually it'll be one of us hopping on. It could be going solo like this, going live, reacting to some of your guys' content, just kind of comments and just kind of going with the flow of things, stream of consciousness. Other times we might have guests on to react along with us. We'll be a little bit kind of free flowing and casual. And yeah, I think we'll kind of get comfortable with it along the way and, you know, kind of get in a good groove. But this is the first one. Mets finished their series with the Cardinals a few hours ago. We've had a few hours now to kind of settle into it. And yeah, unfortunately, after winning the opener in pretty stress-free way, the Mets lose the last two games. They score a total of 1 run in those last two games, lose 2 out of 3 to the Cardinals, who honestly I think will likely be competing with the Pirates, who the Mets just played before this, for last place in the NL Central. I think that they're probably worse than the Pirates. Honestly, I was a little bit more impressed with what Pittsburgh showed in that first series of the year, and the Mets go to St. Louis and they lose a series to them, which is not ideal. They score 5 total runs in the series. That's a 1.6 runs per game if you're keeping track at home. The pitching was great. They only allowed 6 total runs in the series. Just some weird play, specifically in this afternoon's game, I thought, where Lindor forgets how many outs there were at one point while playing defense. Then he gets picked off at first base later in the game. Some people say he was, you know, it seemed like he was like fiddling with his, you know, the glove on his hand or just not paying attention. Maybe he just got like totally fooled by Liberatore's move. That very uncharacteristic from Lindor in particular. Just that sloppy, lackadaisical play overall. Not a great series for Luis Robert, who obviously was the star for the Mets in the first couple games of the season. And just overall, just I mean, it's hard to feel great about how the Mets played over the last few days, and you could extend that to honestly since the second game of the season. And, you know, after opening day, it's been not a lot of offense, and I think that right now is the big focus for everybody, the big frustration right now. It's definitely frustrating for me to watch. I obviously want to have us have like some semblance of context and being rational, just, you know, knowing that, okay, we're 6 games into the season. There is, oh boy, let's do math. What, 157, 156 games left. 6 games of 3-3 play over the course of 162 games. Really not that bad. But when you start a season that way, it obviously all feels magnified. I think Andrew touched on this in our show that we did Sunday night after losing to the Pirates, that, this Mets team, even though there's a lot of new players, and I think we'll get into this a little bit more in a bit, but they do kind of still have a stink to them, I think is how he put it, after what happened last year with the collapse and the lack of clutch hitting and a lot of that stuff. And, when you see the new year start in a way that feels a little bit similar to that, I think people react a little bit faster and are, kind of like, hey, I thought this was supposed to be different. I know it's only been a few games, but I thought this was going to look different. And I understand that. And I kind of want to try to balance the tightrope there. And, I know it's almost 10 o'clock here on the East Coast, so I'm not sure how many comments that we're going to get. But, if you're watching this live on Twitter or YouTube, like, throw some comments in the chat. If you got questions, I'll respond to those as we go. But yeah, I want to try to like toe that line between being frustrated, but not completely going overboard, because it is April 1st after all. And there is a hell of a lot of baseball left. I mean, the 2024 Mets started what, 0-5, right? From 0-5 to OMG. So we've had worse starts for sure. But it's definitely frustrating. I mean, the offense is, I think, what we're going to talk about the most in this show right now. Man, the offense went 1 for 29 with runners in scoring position in this series, which is just, I mean, even for the Mets, that is a pretty unbelievable stat right there. 1 for 29. The one was on Monday night. That was the one game that they scored runs in. They won that game 4-2. Clay Holmes pitched very well in that game. The bullpen was great in that game. But even that night, I felt like they were really fortunate to even score 4 runs. That one hit with runners in scoring position was Bo Bichette. He had an RBI single. I think that was with 2 outs. And I actually thought that was probably the best Bo Bichette has looked so far in these first 6 games, was that series opener on Monday night in St. Louis. But they were pretty fortunate to get those runs across, because the other 3, the first run scores on Lindor, hits a leadoff triple to start the game. Soto can't get him home. Bichette comes up. The infield is drawn in. Bichette actually hits a kind of weak ground ball right to the second baseman, but the guy made a mistake, doesn't get the out at home, throws Bichette out at first, so they get a run, luckily, on an RBI ground out that probably should have been an out at the plate. They score another run on a Jared Young RBI double. Just like funny enough that Jared Young gets the start at first base. Everybody's like, why is he getting the start? No Vientos, no Beatty. Obviously Polanco is dealing with some Achilles stuff, so the Mets DH'd him and benched him a little bit during this series to give him some rest. And Jared Young, of course, comes through with an RBI double in that game, and then the other run in that game just came on a bases loaded walk. So pretty fortunate to even score the 4 runs that they scored, and then after that, it was essentially nothing. The Mets get shut out on Tuesday. I mean, Andre Palante, the game 2 starter for the Cardinals. This guy had a 5.31 ERA last year. Was one of the worst starters in baseball for a guy who I think made 31 starts last year. This is not a guy who had just like a handful of really bad starts, and the ERA looked inflated. Like, he was that level of bad for the entire season. And in his first start of 2026, the Mets can't score a single run against him. They couldn't score a run against Ryan Stanek, who pitched in 2 of these 3 games, and they get shut out last night. And then, this afternoon, pretty much the same thing. They had a lot less run scoring opportunities on Tuesday, and for a while this afternoon, they didn't really have many opportunities with runners in scoring position until later in the game, and then they really started to rack up. I think there was a moment in this, what is it, the ninth inning? I think Polanco hits a leadoff double, can't get him in. Obviously, you get the ghost runners, and that I think is always the most egregious thing for me. Is I don't like this Manfred ghost runner rule, the Manfred man, as some people like to call it. It's not my thing. It's like baseball shootout almost, like in hockey, and it's not my favorite. But if you can't even score with a free, literally a free runner, they are giving it to you, guy on second, nobody outs, in extra innings. Bare minimum, you score the one run, and honestly, if you're the road team, you really need to score two to feel good about that. And the Mets are in such a funk early this season that not only can they not score the free runner, I mean, half the time they can't even get the guy to third base. I think in the 10th inning, he didn't even move from second to third. They get lucky because their bullpen continues to pitch incredibly well, so they don't give up the free runner in the 10th either. They get a basically a second chance to go after it in the 11th, and it looked like for a second they were going to break through. They have the bases loaded with one out, and I don't want to out him, but Michael Barron, who obviously co-created Just Mets with me, does a lot of stuff with the newsletter every week. He's been on the show since we launched the podcast last summer a couple of times as well. He texts me in somewhat in jest, but also we've been texting for every Mets season basically since 2012, I think, at this point. So I know the kernels of truth are there as well, but when the bases are loaded with one out, he texts me so how are they going to screw this up? And they don't get the run home again. And you'll want to throw your hands in the air, but it's also, I feel like they're in such a funk right now that you kind of expect they'll find a way not to score. And it might be, very stress-free. It might just be pop outs and ground balls right to fielders and strikeouts when you need a fly ball. But they'll, or it could be something dramatic. They get robbed, something weird happens, guys get doubled off. We saw that a couple days ago. But whatever it is, it just seems like they'll find that way. And yeah, I mean, it's a frustrating way to lose. Obviously, they get walked off pretty much immediately in the bottom of the 11th. There's a fly ball to right field that I think some people wanted Bench to make a play on. Don't want to get on the kid too much on it. Don't score one run in 11 innings against the crappy Cardinals is kind of how I feel about that. And yeah, I mean, I keep looking at the stat on my screen, but 1 for 29 with runners in scoring position in the series is that's just unbelievable. The Mets score. I think this part's frustrating too, where you watch them on opening day, right? And it's wow, they go down 2-0 immediately, and you're kind of oh boy, here we go again. And Paul Skeens is on the mound, and they instantly respond with these classic long at bats. They're grinding it out. Yeah, they got helped by the defense, but they also put themselves in a position where even if O'Neal Cruz doesn't botch that ball in center field, the Mets very likely finish that inning having tied the game at a minimum 2-2 and driving Paul Skeens' pitch count up to 30. They were grinding him to that level. Obviously, they broke through more because of O'Neal Cruz's adventures, I guess, if you want to call them, in center field. But, they were grinding out at bats, and they did that at many opportunities in the game. They wind up scoring 11 runs, and you're thinking, okay, this is the blueprint. This is, proof of concept, I think, was what I was saying to Andrew in the show over the weekend, where you ship all these fan favorites out. Pete Alonso's gone. He hit his first home run of the season as a Baltimore Oriole yesterday against Jacob deGrom, of all people, with Brandon Nimmo in attendance, which is just kind of an insane thing. Of course it happened that way. But he's gone, and Nimmo's gone, and Jeff McNeil's gone, and all these guys have been around for a while. They're gone, and the Eric Chavez, Jeremy Barnes, the pitching coaches for the last several years, or the hitting coaches for the last several years, they're gone as well. And you're thinking, like, this is why you do all that. This is why you have this like contact oriented lineup where on paper it's a very deep lineup. You look at them, even with, Semien, who, if you want to think he might be cooked, like the trends and stats from the last couple of years and how he started this year, he's 2 for 20 at the plate, hasn't hit the ball very hard at any point either. That might be true, but even so, you look 1 through 8 in that lineup. If you want to put Semien in the 9 hole, there shouldn't be really any easy outs there. There's a lot of contact and power and, versatility as well, because you have a nice balance of lefties and righties. You have a couple of switch hitters with Lindor and Polanco in there too. Got some good lefties and righties off the bench that you can utilize. It should be one of the better lineups of baseball, and it very well may wind up being that. But we're reacting to 3 games and 6 games total right now, and it's frustrating, I guess, to see them do that and get your hopes up, and then for the next 5 games after that to be the complete opposite of that, the antithesis of that, right? Where they score 11 runs on opening day, they scored 12 runs in 5 games since. And you look up and down the lineup, and it's because other than really the Juan Soto, guys really aren't hitting right now. Like, not even just with runners in scoring position. Obviously, that has been horrific since opening day. And I'm going to say it like 10 more times probably in this podcast, but 1 for 29 with runners in scoring position in St. Louis. It's insane. But Francisco Lindor, he's walked a bunch of times, which is nice. Like, he's at least getting on base, but he's off to his like kind of classic slow start that he gets off to every year. And you also wonder, the hamate bone injury that he's coming back from, is there an impact there? Is that hindering him? We don't really know. He's 3 for 21. 2 of those 3 hits are triples, which is nice, but 3 for 21. Bo Bichette is the one we have talked about the most and will continue to talk about. He's going to, unfortunately for him, he's just going to be the lightning rod because he's the new guy that's making a lot of money. He's the 3-hitter, and he's 3 for 27. He's striking out a lot. Has not looked great. I said it before, but Monday I think was really the only positive game we've seen from him so far. Again, in this incredibly small sample size. Jorge Polanco is 4 for 19. He had a good opening day. Really hasn't done much since. Just missed a walk-off home run on Sunday, but just missing, unfortunately, doesn't count for us. Brett Beatty's 5 for 18. Carson Benj is 3 for 19. You worry about the rookie. He didn't get much seasoning in AAA last year. He also really, really struggled when he was there last year. Is he ready? Again, we're not going to make that distinction off of 6 games. You give the kid several weeks, if not months, and I think you reevaluate at that point. And then Marcus Semien, as I brought up before, is 2 for 20, and I think he's definitely like the worst. He's the only one of this group. Again, put Benj aside. He's a rookie, so it's a little bit different. But of that group that I just went through, I think the guy that you're truly the only really worried about is Semien, because this has been a trend for several years. This was something we talked about when the Mets made that trade with Nimmo. You're getting Gold Glove defense, and the dude has been awesome defensively. Like, every single ground ball hit to that left side of the infield, I have supreme, like, unbridled confidence that he's going to make the play, whether it's difficult or routine. And he's made every single play. He's made it look pretty easy so far. So that's very valuable, and that's been great. But, when the Mets made that trade, it was more about the flexibility that it gave them to make other moves and to go from a 5-year commitment with a lot of money to a 3-year commitment with a lot of money. I don't think that they were super excited to get Semien for his bat at this point in his career. I think he's a good glove. He's a good clubhouse guy from everything we've heard, and they saved money and some years with it. And I think that was the big thing. And that gave them the versatility, the flexibility to go out and spend more. on like a Bo Bichette and some of the other guys that they wound up bringing in after they made that trade. It really kind of changed their entire offseason. So I guess if you wanted to look at Brett Beatty and just say, hey, the same way people are skeptical about Mark Vientos, in our show that we did right before the season, I said he has to earn his playing time because I don't trust it, because it's really one good year he's had in all of the opportunities he's gotten. Brett Beatty, you can kind of say the same thing about. His one good year was really like half a good year, and it was not nearly as good as Mark Vientos's was in 2024. Obviously, the big distinguishing factor there is Brett Beatty's defense is very valuable, and now that he is kind of turning into the new version of Jeff McNeil on defense, where he can play third base, second base, first base, and now starting to get opportunities in right field. He started in right field on Tuesday. That has a lot of value. But if you don't trust his bat yet, because kind of every time they've relied on Brett Beatty to hit, he hasn't. I would get that. I want to give the guy an opportunity. He's also not the only one here. And of all the guys I listed, he's the only guy who has 5 hits. So he's the best of the bunch there. But yeah, overall, the offense has been frustrating for sure. I'll bring up some of the comments here. Jay Hawkins 24, same shit every fucking year. And then this is my uncle Scott. Thanks for watching. Same impotent offense. And I think that kind of transitions into one of the things I did want to talk about, which I touched on a little bit a few minutes ago, but I want to find the line here of being true to the feelings of being a fan and also not being like a complete WFAN style first take, like blowhard about it, because it's 6 games. April started today. Like we haven't even really we've been playing March baseball so far. So I would classify this as, watching this Mets offense right now, you should be frustrated, but not panicking is how I would put it. And I think it's totally fair to be frustrated. I would not project long-term right now. And I think that the reason that you see this happening is, one, sports fans are sports fans. Like, sports fans are insane. Obviously, it's always going to happen with any fan base, with any team, regardless of high expectations, low expectations. This is a team you could trust. Look at Yankee fans. They have high expectations every year. They're good every year, and they complain more than anybody. So it happens with everybody. But I think in particular here, what's going on is fans have long memories. I think of the super bad scene where Jonah Hill yells, people don't forget, because you like to think with every year that it's a fresh start. But for fans, it's not a fresh start, even though you changed a lot of the players, a lot of new guys in, a lot of old guys out. The coaching staff, other than the manager, is entirely turned over. The philosophy is different. Like, there is a lot that has changed. And yet, because of the way last season ended, those final 3.5, 4 months of one of the bigger collapses and disappointing seasons in the history of this franchise, just because you turned over the roster and you turned over the calendar, for fans doesn't mean that it's over. This is not a new season in the fan emotional lexicon. It is a continuation of last year. And when you have a season that ends so disappointingly, so bitterly, so, for some people agonizing, and the next year starts and it feels similar, even if it's just a week in, people are going to react to that even more than they would normally. And that to me is what I'm seeing, is that people are getting triggered by it because it's like, hey, this is how last year went. This is how it feels like a lot of seasons have gone being a Mets fan the last 10, 15, 20 years, maybe even longer than that. And we made all these changes. We got rid of all these players because it was supposed to be different. And even though it's only been a handful of games, it feels and looks exactly the same as it did last year. And I think that is why people are so much more frustrated than I think that they probably should be. And that's again where I want us to walk this line and try to balance it out of, yes, be frustrated. It's annoying. Like, losing 2 out of 3 to the Cardinals, who I genuinely think stink and are not going to have a good year, is annoying, especially because you could have easily swept them. This was a very winnable series. Could have won last night. They absolutely could have won today. I guess one positive you could point at is all the games the Mets have lost, they easily could have won. They have not been blown away in any of these games. Their biggest defeat was 3-0 on Tuesday. But yeah, I mean, that's how I see it. I'm not sure if anybody watching has any different feelings. I'm going to bring up this comment from Jabonis. He writes, I don't know if the Mets need an exorcist or a sports psychologist. Porque no los dos. They probably could benefit from both. Maybe get some sage, light it up, just exercise those demons in some way. Yeah, I mean, I think it's too early to panic. I think it's fair to be annoyed or frustrated within reason. So I don't know. That's kind of how I feel about it. I don't think we need to harp any more on the offense because I feel like I've been talking about it for half an hour already. I will say that there is one big positive to take away, and this is something me and Andrew touched on a little bit a couple days ago, and I think we can get into it a little bit more now, and then I can finally go to sleep after that. But the pitching, the pitching without a doubt was the biggest reason that the Mets collapsed last year. I always point at the hitting not being talked about enough, and I still completely stand by it. But the biggest reason, of course, why they fell apart last year was the rotation fell apart based on health, based on guys running into walls, based on guys not going enough innings. And that in turn destroyed the bullpen, which was, I would say, probably league average with an elite closer at the back end. But they were relied upon so heavily with innings that it brought the bullpen down eventually as well. So that was the biggest question mark coming into this year, is what's the pitching going to be like, because it literally ruined the season last year. And again, if we're going to react negatively to the hitting over the first 6 games, then we have to in turn react the same way positively for the pitching. And it's been really good on both ends. The starting pitchers through 6 games now have a 3.06 ERA. We just got through 1 full turn of the rotation. Freddie Peralta made his second start today. Was much better today than he was on opening day. I think opening day was probably a little fluky. That first ball that Brandon Lau hit in particular, I think really carried. It was really the only ball that felt like truly carried at Citi Field over the first weekend of the season. But he seemed like he mostly settled down. He wasn't great, but he's okay. And it really, since then, they've been getting really solid starts every day. I think the worst start they've gotten since then is like 5 innings, 2 runs, which last year there were times where you would have kissed the dirt under the feet of, whoever was pitching that day, if they could give you 5 innings and not blow up. Honestly, if you would have probably kissed the ground if they went 5 innings and gave up 5 runs with how bad things were getting last year. So that's been awesome. And the bullpen, shockingly, and again, I don't know if this is going to hold. I mean, this ERA won't hold, but the fact that the Mets being a good to even solid bullpen, I'm curious if that'll keep up. But so far, 1.75 ERA for the Mets bullpen. They've only allowed 5 runs as a bullpen this season, and a good chunk of that was by Garcia on opening day. I guess it helps a tiny bit that half of their games have gone to extra innings, so most of the runs they've given up in extras technically aren't earned runs, so they've given up a little bit more. But honestly, like, these games don't even get to extra innings if the Mets bullpen hasn't been doing the work that they're doing. And honestly, everybody other than Garcia and Richard Lovelady, we haven't talked about Richard Lovelady, and I really don't want to, because this is supposed to be the positive section of the show. Richard Lovelady needs to be off of the New York Mets. I almost got this afternoon scrolling through Twitter while I was at work, and I quickly saw a post from, I think it was Mets Muse, said the Mets extended Richard Lovelady for 3 years, and I nearly threw my laptop before immediately remembering that it was April Fool's Day and that the Mets would never do that. Richard Lovelady needs to not be on the Mets. I never saw a reason for him to make the team at all. I thought Craig Kimbrell deserved to make the team. I know Lovelady is a lefty, but what good is being a lefty if you can't get anybody out, is kind of how I feel about that. And I won't even bring up the fact that the Mets pitched him on Tuesday. They weren't going to score in that game, so I guess you can't really argue with it, because they wound up having a pretty full, ready-to-go bullpen today in a game where they really needed that. But, they've played 6 games. Richard Lovelady's pitched in 3 of them, and in extra innings, twice, I think, both times in the Pirates series, if I'm remembering correctly. I need to never see him pitch again, and he has not been cut yet. He is still on the team. I don't know how much longer that's going to go, and as we know from his transaction report, that just because the Mets cut Richard Lovelady doesn't mean he's not going to come back anyways. So even if they did get rid of him, we may very well not be done with him right away. But other than Richard Lovelady and Garcia in the first couple of games of the year, the bullpen's been great. Devin Williams, I know people have been really nervous about him, but he's been pretty awesome. His first save opportunity on Monday night, he was locked down. His airbender changeup was moving. Honestly, I thought better than at any point we saw when he was on the Yankees last year. I don't know what happened with him and that pitch in particular last year in the Bronx, but he's looked great. He's pitched 3 scoreless outings so far. Weaver's been pretty good. Brooks Raley's awesome. That's far and away the best. I mean, David Stearns had a bad 2025, specifically in season. Far and away the best in-season move he made last year was bringing Brooks Raley back off the injury and giving him a 2-year contract. That continues to pay really big dividends for this team. Tobias Myers, I really like, and that makes the Freddie Peralta trade look a lot better if Myers is going to be a true bullpen, true weapon in this bullpen. I guess the other guy that I didn't bring up on the negative side, because we've only seen him the once so far, is Sean Manaea. You worry about Sean Manaea, but he did not pitch in this series. Nothing new to add about him, other than what we saw against the Pirates over the weekend. But yeah, so kind of a mixed bag. I mean, that's what you get when you're 6 games into the season, and 2, you've won half the games, you've lost half the games. But yeah, pitching's been overall. Honestly, it's funny when you look at opening day. Nothing that happened on opening day has played out since then, because the pitching kind of sucked on opening day and the offense is awesome. And in 5 games since then, the pitching's been awesome and the hitting's been really, really awful. Other than really Juan Soto, he seems like kind of the only guy who's hitting right now. And he's not even like ripping the cover off the ball. He's been solid, but he did homer today for the only run of the entire game. So I'll give Soto credit for that. But yeah, I think that's it for me. Not a lot of comments in the chat. Obviously, I threw this up pretty last minute. Wasn't sure if I was going to go live or pre-record this. Decided like the hell with it. Let's go live. Let's vibe out on a Wednesday night. Let's vent a little bit, but again, vent responsibly. And yeah, there's no off day this week. The Mets go right back into it. They go to San Francisco for a 4-game series starting tomorrow. So a lot of late night games. As somebody who is now in their mid 30s and works a day job. Okay, hang on. Before I wrap it up, my uncle writes, Juan Sola, like, it's not his fault that nobody's getting on base in front of him now. Would you rather he hit no home runs is what I'll say. And he got he hit the double that could have led to them winning the game on Sunday against the Pirates if the third base coach doesn't make that horrible sense. So I call you out a little bit on that one. The one guy on the team who's hitting, but yeah, with the Mets on the West Coast, and they're going to be on the West Coast a lot this first month and a half, which is really weird. I genuinely don't understand what the schedule. I wouldn't want to be a schedule maker. That seems like one of the most confoundingly hard, complicated jobs that exists. But that being said, the Mets starting the season with a 3-game homestand, and then what is it? 4 of their first 5 road trips. They go to the West Coast, I think. Pretty insane. But yeah, what I was saying before is somebody who is in their mid 30s, has a day job, will not be watching these night games live. We'll have to watch them back on the MLB app the following day, just because I guess I just don't have that dog in me anymore. But Mets go to San Francisco. They're not off to the best start either. They really got shut down by the Yankees in their first series of the year, although the Yankees are giving up like half a run a game right now. So they're kind of on a bit of a run to start the season. But, this, again, should be a very winnable series for the Mets. You got to hope that the bats start to heat up. Not the greatest ballpark for that, but you can score runs. You don't need to just hit home runs. So hopefully, would love to see the Mets take 3 out of 4, salvage the road trip at that point before heading back home. Andrew and I will be back on Sunday night. Let me take a look at what time that game is, if that's an afternoon game. So they play at 4:00 on Sunday Eastern time. It's also Easter that day. So Andrew and I will communicate, but we'll probably go live at some point later that night to recap not only that series, but the full week in total. Do our segments that we introduced last week, which I'm very fond of the curtain calls, which goes to the best person or player from the week. And then definitely my favorite, the El Stinko, who goes to the person or player who didn't have the best week possible. Last week's El Stinko was our first one, and Andrew gave it to the third base coach. I gave it to Bo Bichette, which felt a little obvious, but had to go that way. This week, I don't know. We're only halfway through. I'm not sure who either of those guys or who either of these awards would go to at this point, but I think the next 4 days will play a big part in making those choices. We'll also make our weekly predictions. We'll keep up with every week now. We'll make predictions of what the Mets record's going to be the upcoming week. We're going to keep track of that the whole season. It's also going to determine who gets to go first and pick first for the following episode. I think I picked 5-2, so the Mets would have to sweep the Giants to accomplish that. So not feeling great there. So I have a feeling Andrew's probably going to win the week. But we'll see. Stranger things have happened. But this was fun. Thank you guys for joining me for the first one of these kind of midweek shows. Andrew will be doing this one next week. Not sure if he'll have a guest or not, but sure we'll figure that out. But yeah, we'll be back on the feeds on Sunday night. If you are a Patreon subscriber, we're going to have a new episode exclusively for patrons that comes out probably first thing Friday morning. We're going to be doing a MLB home run draft for the season, so that should be a lot of fun. If you want to subscribe to our Patreon, it's just $5 a month. You get those episodes every single week. We're going to do lots of different fun stuff, some drafts, some mailbags, some different interactive segments. So stay tuned for all of that. You can subscribe at justmets.net, where you can also subscribe to our newsletter, which is free. or patreon.com/justmets. If you're watching this on YouTube, please, like, subscribe. It really helps us out in the algorithm. Or if you're listening to us on one of the podcast apps later on, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any of that stuff, you could give us a 5-star rating and review. We would tremendously appreciate it. Also, if you leave us a review, if you want to leave us like a comment or a question in the review, we will read that back in one of our episodes in the future and can respond to it there. But yeah, appreciate you guys. Tough series. Hopefully the Mets turn it around soon. We'll be back Sunday. And until then, let's go Mets.